Welcome back to Hypnagogue. Happy to have you here. Reminder that this story is available on Substack to read. You can get info on that in the show notes. And also a request to please support this show if you're enjoying it. You can leave a 5-star rating on Spotify. You can share this episode with someone you think would enjoy it. Share the story. Would be much appreciated. I'm going to start including recaps, previously ons, for your enjoyment, for your pleasure. So here is a recap of what has happened in Hypnagogue so far. After the natural death of his friend Elufeus, a lighthouse keeper who he spent 15 years tending to, Gabriel has been unleashed to the winds of his own grief. In order to protect Elufeus's dream of a natural death, Gabriel knew he had to put distance between Elufeus's deathbed and his beyond natural presence. He mounted the powerful horse Sifra and rode as fast as he could, as far away as he could get. Fleeing the scene of Elufeus's death, their ride together became more and more supernatural. In the aftermath, Gabriel suspected he may have tampered with the physical world around him in a way that is irreversible. Already lord of a precarious world, Gabriel now fears he may have put everyone in further danger. Ending up at St. Naja's Hospital, he decides to seek help and finds Doctor Jasmine Le Fraye, a kind woman with a rare specialty in hypnagogic patients. Against hospital protocol, Jasmine invited Gabriel to come as a guest to her family's estate, where she hopes he will find a bit of peace and begin to heal. If he cannot, who knows what further risks he may bring to the people around him. All the while, Gabriel is haunted by those last conversations with Elufeus. In particular, a mysterious philosopher king from far away whom Elufeus thought would make for Gabriel an intriguing new pursuit. While Gabriel resists the suggestion, traces of the philosopher king begin to show up along his path. Is he being drawn in? Here is Chapter 6, Lord of Infinite Matrimony. An excerpt from On Negotiation, Part 9, Negotiating with Gravity, written by the Chief Executor of the Veric Salvage Company, Ira Vera, 39th of the face. It is a brutal inversion, having the earth dump you into the sky. The worser inversion is what I've seen landfall do to people's homes. It'll turn your home into a crumbling cage. If you are lucky, the floor drops clean out from below and you have only the purgatory of freefall awaiting you. But it rarely happens this neatly. We tell them, if we cannot take you from your home, the sky will take you both. And they know. We all know the things we've done to keep this from happening. But then, looking into their eyes, you are death itself. Impossible. Incomprehensible. They won't take it. To think of the children we've dragged from their homes, the doors we've locked behind them. The only thing worse is the ones we did not drag, the ones we did not lock out of hell. In the wake of 2 exuberant children was my drab, cadaverous person towed forward, all by the grace and generosity of a doctor named Jasmine Le Fraye. The civil and tax-bartering mud monster, Slorp, had greeted us where the cottonwood forest opened, releasing us into a broad, clear-eyed sky. Bright light diffused across a lofty ocean of blue and gray. The canopy ceiling extinguished, my felt I felt my spine straighten and my head lift. The sky was so suddenly vast, its horizons blown so far away from each other that the initial impression was of completely flat, inarticulate land. But for the young, fresh eyes of the girls and the enlightening love which Jasmine bore her kin families home, I could easily see its beauty, its subtlest swelling of earth, a rise and fall as smooth and serene as the flight of a swallow. The grassy plains were unevenly shorn. Droopy, tangled wildflowers flourished in small islets, while large patches of earth were shorn handsomely thin. Their bovine groomers dotted the landscape. It was a herd of cattle larger than I had seen ever before. With even the most level of plains, a field that stretched for miles before succumbing at last to the horizon, their numbers still filled the expanse. Their pasture, while massive, was not boundless. A white, wire-strung fence marked the perimeter. To the east of their enclosure, the cottonwood forest rose up like a green, feathery cliff. To the west of their enclosure, the earth had been painted with asphalt, a massive black stripe shooting away from the estate. Its mechanical occupant was there like a colossal, self-evident whale, worn and white, shapely and shining. An airship. Painted along its side in tall, handsome letters was its name, Stallion. Their house stood in front of the ship like a woman trying to hide a full-grown mare by standing in front of it. It was an elegant house, 2 stories in a pale yellow color with light trim. Around it, a smattering of sheds and lesser buildings, the carriage, the dairy house, the wash house. The girls disappeared past the house, seemingly making for the ship. Jasmine displayed no signs of surprise nor concern. I followed her to the carriage house, both of us still on foot, and we deposited her bike in the stall next to a chestnut-brown colt. "How are you now that you're here?" she asked, turning away from her exchange with the colt to look at me. I suppose I, in theory, should have known this question was coming before it arrived, but her address took me by surprise. Her eyes, looking at me, were so close, so tangible, so real. How was I? How was I? How? Words like a dislocated shoulder hinging on not much. "The ship?" I asked. Jasmine smiled knowingly. "Quite the elephant in a field, isn't it? That's the girls' ship. They'll fly it one day." Certain mental mechanics, rusty but still operational, caught hold and started turning in my mind for me. A relational ship? I remembered the concept. Jasmine nodded. "For deliveries." The girls bolted for the ship, and Jasmine's nonchalance made sense then. The girls were, 6, 7 years old? They were still in the foundational years of training. Play was encouraged, a way to familiarize themselves with the ship's intricate design and start building that essential bond between craft and crew which made possible so many miraculous feats. If they succeeded, the girls would cross rift canyons, stagnancy fields, any number of twisted phenomena. And if they weren't raised at the same age out of coincidence, they were made to be the same age, to grow up, side by side. I wondered at who might have made that decision. "A doctor and 2 delivery captains," I observed politely. "A very talented kin family you have. Who else was there?" While Jasmine took the compliment kindly, her face told an indeterminate story. Love and gratitude, yes, but wariness also, and doubt. "Well," she began, "there's Murugan, who you are likely about to meet. He's a bit princely, but he means well. Very contemplative. And then there's Miss Mabel. She's grown old, you see. She's the last of us who, well, you see, our family is very young, or very newly joined, I should say." The mental formations clouding this topic for her were ominous enough. I did not inquire further. Jasmine took the conversation easily forward, telling me of the various maids and field hands who helped run the estate. Soon we came to the front steps of the house. Here she paused and turned to me. "Can I ask you something?" "Of course." "I was sort of careless before we got here, and I didn't think Marn and Solveig through, but there's more of my family. The only times I've ever been present with a hypnagogued individual are only, well, how do I say this? In professional medical settings, people are only made aware they're in the presence of a hypnagogue when necessary. But I've always thought that, ideally, a person ought to be given the chance to know ahead of time, to consent. Because, as you know, the implications can be staggering and really irreversible." "Excuse me, Dr. Jasmine." "Yes. You can give your family a chance to consent to my company. You're very thoughtful." She wavered once more, this time with more difficulty. Now that she was here at her kinfamily's threshold with me in tow, a terrible, shaming doubt burst open in her chest. What had she been thinking? Bringing me here may have been an awful mistake. How foolish of her to offer her home to me, to think it might be a place of respite. The emotions were too passionate. She looked at me, and we both knew how she felt. She couldn't bring herself to suggest I might go elsewhere. She had offered her home to me, and to backtrack now was not only impolite, but she thought a bit cowardly. For my part, I tried to muster some form of assurance. I could hardly. My mind was completely sapped of every beatific nicety that I had ever been spoken. "Well, I'll be as miserable here as I am anywhere else," I said with a crooked smile. Then, restraining myself, I asked earnestly, "Do you want me here, now that we're here?" She straightened up, searching for her own intuition. "My family can be complex, and bringing in an omnipotent God who can turn people's minds inside out, it might disrupt the balance. I'm not a god, but that's all right." Silence between us. "But, Jasmine?" "Yes?" "I can see you. Understand you, that is. And you've dreamed of meeting another hypnagogue for a long time. And you wanted to bring them to your family." "I do still feel that way." "Yes, and I don't want to influence you against your better judgment." I backed off, making myself smaller. "But I just wanted to point that out." She looked at me funny for a long moment, before a small, feeble smile broke through. "Would you be comfortable waiting out here on the porch while I go talk to them?" I looked around, finding a lovely porch swing cushioned with red, flowery pillows. "Absolutely." She hesitated a moment and then reached for the door, opened it, and walked inside. I took my seat on the porch swing, looking back at the forest from which we had just emerged. It was growing darker as the sun shifted in the sky, crawling onward towards nighttime. It grew darker and darker as its large leafy face fell into shadow, further and further, until night was right at the door, ready to slip down over our shoulders. She would talk with her family, and this would take much longer than Jasmine expected. Jasmine rushed through the estate, catching any person before they could round the front of the house and lay eyes on me. She gathered Murugan, and then one by one each of the estate's workers, into Miss Mabel's room. "You killed him," muttered Miss Mabel confusedly. She was looking around at all the people packed tightly into her room with confusion. Susilla, her Daner, sat close to her bedside and explained that Jasmine had called an all-family and all-staff meeting. "You killed him," Miss Mabel repeated, and Susilla wiped at her brow. On the far side of the room, Murugan sat in the bay window, legs crossed, slouched against the side paneling, gazing absent-mindedly out over the fields. Jasmine stood by the door. "I've called you all in here as a matter of respect and intentionality. I've brought home a special guest whose acquaintance I want each person in this family and on this staff to take into careful consideration. As I've told many of you before, my medical training included a licensing course in the science and craft of hypnagogation, which is when I had my first experience meeting a hypnagogated individual." As Jasmine's prelude unfolded, Murugan, sitting in the corner, propped up and began leaning forward with an intense look of concentration narrowing onto his face. Jasmine smiled radiantly. "Hypnagogation is a fascinating area of study, and meeting a person who's actually had this procedure done on them is nothing short of life-changing in my experience. You'll meet someone who can read your mind, someone who is as much you as they are themselves, someone who's deeply intertwined with the fabric of our reality." The small crowd gathered into the room was enlivened by this description. Many of them had asked Dr. Jasmine about her hypnagogic studies before, but now it seemed that she was implying that I need to also convey to you what many people consider the detriments of meeting a hypnagogated individual. Unreality, she looked around nervously, is believed to be closely tied to hypnagogation exposure. That's to say, this could increase your odds of being pronounced unreal. We all know the difficulties that can bring for a person. Poor Jasmine. How I wanted to run inside and shake them all by their shoulders to tell them that no human being was real or unreal. I would scream it from the top of my lungs from where I sat on that damned porch, if only the sound of my voice was not considered exposure enough. As Jasmine continued her speech, my mind drifted away, and I couldn't help but wonder if this path we had chosen to take, of telling everyone everything, was really the better option. For really, we weren't telling everyone everything. Not at all. For one, I knew that unreality was a farce. At best, a human misunderstanding. At worst, a cultural manipulation. Meeting me would not inherently raise the odds of this unwanted fate. What was detrimental to the health and well-being of all these dear human beings, however, was paranoia. I feared now that what I'd let Jasmine do was go upstairs and freely speak poison into the hearts and minds of those she most cared for. Would they spend the rest of their lives worried about running into a hypnagogue? Furthermore was a misunderstanding even the doctor could not grasp enough to surpass. Here they were, huddled in that poor dying woman's bedchamber, discussing the dangers of setting eyes upon me. Yet my sight is not held to my eyes, not like theirs. No, nothing like theirs. How they misunderstood. The trespass was already complete. I sat here, listening to their conversation, feeling each and every one of their souls like pebbles already in hand. I was disgusted by myself, by how far I had allowed this charade to charge forward. Each man and woman sagely contemplating their own volitions, and yet here the decision had already been made. It was grief, no doubt, that had clouded my judgment and allowed this to happen. I resolved then and there to never again indulge so wantonly in the reveries of sadness and shame. My power was too great, my responsibility too final. So quickly was I proven relapsed, as the door swung open, and I was informed that the people had made their decisions. It was dark now, and the porch light had turned on. All of the staff had chosen to go sleep in the guest house. Standing in front of me was Murugan, with Dr. Jasmine at a distance, gazing warily over his shoulder. The young boy invited me inside with an arrogant grin. "There's so much to ask you," he said. Thank you for listening to another chapter of Hypnagogue. If you enjoyed this episode and want to support this project, it would mean a lot if you followed the show, left a 5-star rating, or shared Hypnagogue with someone you just know would love it. We'll see you next time. Bye, Hypnagang.